What's up, yo? Welcome to Your One Life. I'm your host, Kim Young Kim, and I'm super glad to have you as a listener today. This podcast is all about helping you improve all aspects of your life, teaching you from the greatest minds in the world, and getting you into the friend zone, the best friend zone with yourself. Because here's the deal. If you're not best friends with yourself, what are you doing in life, okay? Treat yourself right. Let's go. All right. In today's episode, what I'll be doing is I'll be covering part one of a two-part series on a book called Essentialism. Now, as I cover the book, I'll also be throwing in personal commentary and also personal identification numbers because someone told me the pen is mightier than the sword. Okay, that was terrible. Keep moving. Let's keep moving. All right, so the book Essentialism is a very good book. This book is written by a guy named Greg Mckeown, and it's been a super helpful book in my life. Now, picture this. Your favorite musician, your favorite singer comes out with a new album and they're being interviewed on TV, and you're watching the interview and they're sitting here talking about the new album. They're like, you know what? I don't know if you know this or not, but I personally designed the cover art myself. I'm not an artist, but I learned how to become an artist to do this. And besides that, I also wrote 400 tweets in haiku format to promote this new album. Beyond that, I made the sequin dress that I'm wearing on the cover myself. 4,622 sequins total. On top of that, I wrote a book about my experience making this album, and I signed 10,000 copies of the book. And the interviewer is looking at them and they're like, wow, you did all that? How long did you actually spend on making the album? And the musician says, oh, just a few weeks to write all the music and just 2 days to record. I had so much to do, I didn't have time to actually work on making the music. And then they play the album and it is garbage. It is absolute garbage. Now, no self-respecting musician would do this because they understand that as a musician, they only have one job. But here's the deal. A lot of people live this way, and I've been guilty myself, and I'm going to sit here and say, hey, you know what? Non-essentialism has been a part of my life, and I am working hard to stop doing it. But too many people in this world act like the person I just described. They're doing all these other things that they shouldn't be doing, and they're not focusing on the important stuff. They're not focusing on the one thing and the few things that will make a massive impact in their lives. And what Greg Mckeown talks about in this book is the way of the essentialist. And he refers to it like it's an actual lifestyle because it kind of is, right? Here's his description of essentialism. Essentialism is the consistent and focused pursuit of less but better. Now, less but better is a key phrase that hopefully will become a part of your lifestyle going forward. Anyways, he says essentialism is a consistent and focused pursuit of less but better in all areas of your life. So a running theme throughout the book is doing the right things instead of doing more things. Because this is not a grab bag. This is not Pokemon. You don't have to catch them all, right? And think about this. If you went to a party and there was like 75 people at that party, would you want to make friends with every single person at that party? No, you would not want to do that, right? You're not a politician. You're not shaking hands and kissing babies trying to get votes. You're looking for just a few people that you probably will vibe well with and maybe be friends with in the future. So just like when you go to a party, you're not trying to become friends with every single person at that party. You have to focus your life in that same mindset. You need to spend your time and your energy only on what's essential so you can make the best optimum contribution to activities and projects that actually matter in your life. And here's a spoiler alert, most things don't. Now, in the book, he uses this quote by a poet named Mary Oliver that says, "Tell me what it is you plan to do with your one wild and precious life." That's a great quote. Tell me what you plan to do with your one wild and precious life. Now, in order to focus on what essentialism is, we need to focus on what essentialism is not. And he refers to this as non-essentialism. He says, don't try to be all things to all people. Because when you do, you try to do too many things all at the same time, and it's like chasing two rabbits. You end up pretty empty-handed. And he says, what you're going to do is you're going to make only tiny little progress in multiple activities, and you're going to be a mile wide and an inch deep. Now, let me ask you a question. What if you actually went a mile wide and an inch deep with water, right? And then someone came to you and said, oh, you actually need to use that water to bathe in. Well, you would be like, well, I can't bathe in an inch deep of water. And it's like, well, why did you go so wide on the water then? What we got to do is we got to build walls to contain that water so we have a place to bathe. We have a place we can collect water to drink, so on and so forth, right? And that's what we got to do. You got to build walls around your life in order to make sure that you are getting the things that you actually need. And if you build these walls, you will end up having a good life. Now, going back to non-essentialists, here's some phrases that non-essentialists often say. I have to do it. I can do both. I can do it all. And the truth is, you can't do it all. And what ends up happening is things blow up in your face. Years ago, it was July the 4th, and I was going to see a friend of mine. I actually had two plans that day, which was to go see a guy that I'm friends with, but we're not super tight, but I have positive feelings towards him. So his name's James. We'll call him James for this story. And also, I was supposed to go watch fireworks with my friends Chris and Michelle, and also our other friend Chris, right? And so I went to go visit my friend James, and we're hanging out at his house, and it ended up making me 45 minutes late to go hang out with my three friends. Now, those three friends are very close friends of mine. I still keep in touch with them. I care about them deeply. Every time I'm in LA, I go see them, right? And so because I was late, they were like, dude, we got to go. We're going to be late, so just meet us there, right? So I'm driving over there to the location, this big park where they're having the fireworks, and I couldn't get cell service there. And I couldn't find my friends. I'm walking around this place, and I'm looking for my friends, and I realized that like there's thousands of people here, and it's going to be impossible to find my friends. And I just was defeated, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to go home. And not only did I spend July 4th alone, but I didn't get to see good friends of mine that were very important to me and that are very important to me today. And that day, as I sat at home, I realized, dude, I got to do something to fix my life. And that was a very important moment of essentialism for me. So as a recovering non-essentialist, what I'm telling you is you do not need to live your life like this. You do not need to say yes to pretty much everything. You do not need to just grit your teeth through the things that you're doing and get by the skin of your teeth and just force your way through things in life. That is not the way that you need to go, right? I'm telling you right now that you don't have to live your life like this. You can choose a few important things, and the rest can just be dissed. Don't do it all because you can't, and you need to understand the life that you want right now is the opposite of this. Listen, you got to stop living your life as a non-essentialist, and so do I. Because here's the deal. Imagine you're a chef at a restaurant, right? But imagine you're also the host at a restaurant. Imagine you're also the waiter, the maitre d'. You're also bussing tables. You're the person spinning the sign outside to draw customers in because it's a fancy place. And you're also riding an exercise bike that's powering the electricity of the restaurant, right? That is the life of a non-essentialist. And the results that you'll have doing all the things at this restaurant is the same results you're going to have in life. Nothing that you do is going to go well. You're going to produce garbage. You'll feel completely spun out and out of control. You'll feel completely overwhelmed, and you will be spent and burnt out. Now, in the book, Greg references this guy who is a Silicon Valley executive. And this gentleman said yes to everything his bosses asked of him, and also what his colleagues asked him to do. And he soon found himself completely run ragged because what Greg says in this book is, when you're not making the choices, other people are going to make choices for you, and you're going to function by default. And that'll make more sense later on, but that's what happened to this guy. And he was thinking of quitting his job. And he was absolutely miserable. And we've all been there in a job at some point, right? Have you ever had a job that you hated so much, you were like, you know what? If I make a bomb threat on my workplace, I don't have to go to work today, right? This is a terrible joke. These are just jokes. But this guy was miserable, right? And he was thinking of quitting. And before he quit, though, he started to run this experiment. He said to himself, what if I just started saying no to all these requests? And what if I just focus on the most important things to do in my job? So that's what he did. He stopped actually going to meetings, and he just focused on a few really just important high-value projects. And what ended up happening is he started producing better work, but also his feelings about his job got better as well. And he started to actually, have a strong like for his job. I won't say he loved his job, but he really enjoyed his job, and he started getting all these amazing reviews on his work, and he got this huge bonus, and he ended up not quitting his job. And he was a happy camper after that. That's what happens when you practice essentialism. Now, Greg Mckeown had firsthand experience with this. After his first son was born, he did what any new father would do. He went to a meeting with his client because he felt like this was what he was supposed to do. And when he went to the meeting, he thought he would come off as a hero and people would be happy that he was there. And everybody was disappointed in him. His client was disappointed in him. He was disappointed in himself. And his infant son was like, yo, where's that man that was here 2 hours ago? And what Greg learned in this situation is, if you don't make priorities in your life, someone else will make your priorities for you, and they will not have your best interests in mind. And what he does is he references this guy named Jim Collins in the book, who's written a number of really important books. And Jim Collins examined why very successful companies collapsed. And he found that one of the reasons why is because of the undisciplined pursuit of more. Those companies started doing too much. They started practicing non-essentialism. And this happens in life with a lot of people, right? This happens with fighters. And this happens with boxers, with MMA fighters. They get all sorts of distractions in their life. And they're like, hey, you want to be in a cyborg movie? And they're like, sure, I'll be in a cyborg movie. Oh, we're going to make a sequel to that cyborg movie. And they're like, sure, why not? More money, let's go. And then they hop back in the ring. And then they get put to sleep, right? They get knocked out. And then the very thing that got them to the top and got them all those opportunities has gone away. And then they end up doing commercials for check cashing places and local all-you-can-eat barbecue spots. But the plus side is they get to eat all-you-can-eat barbecue, which will help them on their weigh-ins, I'm sure. All right, so an analogy that Greg Mckeown uses in his book is the closet analogy. He says you need to get your closet organized. Now, if your closet looks anything like mine, you probably got about 46 cardigan sweaters in there. Let's go, cardigan sweaters. Just kidding. But he says get your closet organized by having less stuff in there so that you'll have less cleaning to do. Okay? So first, you got to get rid of stuff. And then after that, you got to come up with a system where you can constantly keep your closet clean and organized instead of creating a Herculean effort in order to do so. So how do you do this? Number one, you need to explore your options. You say to yourself, is this shirt something that sparks joy? And is it something that I enjoy wearing? If you have an Old Navy t-shirt in your closet that's over 2 years old, number one, you need to get rid of that. Number two, you're ruining their business model because they're expecting you to buy new t-shirts every 6 weeks or so. But you say to yourself in that same way, is this activity essential to making my highest contribution? And as you do, you have to remember you got to eliminate these things, because what ends up happening is in your life, in your closet, you value things you already own. because you've paid for it. But what you need to do is you need to ask yourself, what would I be willing to pay for this right now if I had to buy it again at a garage sale? Some of the things in your closet you wouldn't even pay $1 for. And have you ever tried to Venmo somebody 50 cents for something? I haven't personally, and I hope my life never gets to that point. But in that same way, you'll ask yourself, would I go out of my way to do the thing that I am doing right now? The answer is no. It's got to go. And after that, you need to create a system to make doing these important things very simple. And I'll talk more about that in part 2 of this series. All right, so I'm going to do a little something with the essentialist mindset. Yo, check the things that you got to find yet. You got to have a mindset of exploring and weighing out your options. You got to come through and you got to be rocking with only the best things. And that's what I'm saying. Don't be guessing. You got to just choose how you use your time and also your energy. You got plenty of these options in your life, but you got to say no to a long, long list. And that's what I do. Come through and get a whole short list of your yeses. And that's why I say you come through and you bless it with your own life, because most things are not worth your time. I work with mine and I spit a freestyle and I just find I need obstacles straight up remove. And that's what I do when I come through. I'm talking about a system. Use a bunch of wisdom, use a bunch of things so you could have this execution effortless up in your life. And that's what I say when I'm busting on mics. I'm talking about things up in your mindset. And that's why I say you're going to find it coming off the top. And that's how I go. Essentialist mindset right there in the flow. All right. So that's the essentialist mindset. And here's the deal. Regarding that whole idea of most things are not important and most things are trivial, John Maxwell, who's quoted in the book, said this: you cannot overestimate the unimportance of practically everything. And that's true. If you really think about it, you can't overestimate the unimportance of practically everything. And John Maxwell knows this stuff because he is a leadership expert and has written many, many books about leading yourself. Now, in the book, Greg writes about the Pareto principle, which says 20% of our efforts produce 80% of our results, right? 20% of the things we do produce 80% of our results. So if that's the case, what you got to do is you got to figure out what is the cash cow in your life. Once you figure out what that cash cow is, you focus all your energies on that. Now, if anyone knows this, it's Warren Buffett, because what he does is he actually makes a few number of investments, but he makes sure that he chooses the right companies to buy stocks of, right? And 90% of his wealth comes from 10 investments. And one of them that he's bet heavily on is Apple stocks. Warren Buffett understands the importance of his time and his energy. And that man is not wasting any of his time because he's already 1,000 years old and he does not have time to mess around with all these different options. He picks the right ones, and that's what you got to do as well. And the key to it is living with FOMO, right? Living with the idea that you're going to miss out on some things, and that's going to be A-okay. I recently went to IKEA for one reason, which was Swedish meatballs. Let's go. No, I'm just kidding. I went to IKEA because I needed to buy a clock and some storage stuff. So when you go to IKEA, what happens? There is so much to see in IKEA, and there's so much meandering that you can do. And I said to myself when I was at IKEA, I was like, dude, I know you want to look at stuff, but what you got to do is you got to get your stuff and you got to go, because you also have to shop for groceries today. You got to do laundry. You have dinner plans. And I just had to walk straight to those sections, and then I just had to keep moving. And yes, did I miss out on some things that possibly were cool to look at and possibly cool to buy? I probably did. But guess what? What I did is I focused on what was important. I lived with a little bit of FOMO, and then I kept moving so I could have a good day. So in order to be successful, what you got to do is you got to figure out what is important and what is your North Star. So there's a stock that's referenced in this book that has gone up higher than any other stock in the past 30 years. And that stock is Southwest Airlines, believe it or not. Because what Southwest Airlines did is they said, we are going to focus on one thing, which is to be the low-cost service. And that's our focus, right? And because they focused and they chose, this is our North Star, this is how we are going to serve our customers. They were successful and their stock went up ridiculously. Guess what? Continental Airlines tried to do that as well, but they weren't built for low cost service, and they lost a bunch of money trying to do both because you can't do both. And he also references Taco Bell in the book. And Taco Bell, what they were focusing on, they were like, hey, look at this fresh food that we're making. Look how fancy we are. And that's not who Taco Bell is, right? Because if you're at Taco Bell, it's because you're broke, you're broken, you've hit rock bottom, and it's 3 a.m. in the morning, and you're crying. And here's the deal. You can't cry in a booth at Waffle House, okay? That's against the unwritten rules. You can throw a napkin dispenser at somebody. You can throw punches at multiple people. You can steal someone's to-go box as you're dining and dashing, but you can't cry in the booth because the people in Waffle House will see your weakness and they'll pounce on you. So you only have one option, and that's Taco Bell. And if you're not crying at the drive-thru, something is wrong. Because it's 3 a.m. and this is how you're living, Moss. So don't have an identity crisis like Taco Bell. Know your work, know what's important, and prioritize those things and move according to that. And as you live your life, what you're going to do is you're going to have to make trade-offs. You're going to have to give up certain things in order to be successful. I heard this many, many times in many different books and podcasts, but they say if you want to be successful in life, you can have a career, you can have a family, and you can have a social life, but you can't have all three. You got to give up one of those in order to be successful. And what Greg says in the book is, he says, don't ask what I have to give up, ask what I have to go big on. What are you going to go big on in your life? I have a friend of mine, she used to work at the Grammys. And when she had kids, she quit working at the Grammys. She quit working in general besides helping her husband with his business. And she decided what she's going to do is she's going to go big on homeschooling her kids. She's going big on her family. And she has this photography business on the side, but it is absolutely not a full-time business. It's just a side hustle that she has. And she's not lamenting her career at the Grammys. She's not lamenting the fact that she had to give up things. She just said to herself, what am I going big on? I'm going big on my family. I have friends of mine also who won't have kids. They decided they are not going to have kids because they're going to focus on their life mission. And that's the decision they made. And they don't focus and they don't sit here and talk about, oh man, I wish I could have a family. They're focusing on what they're going big on. And there's no judgment either way. You can have a family, you can not have a family. That's not what's important. What's important is you choose what you're going big on and you go big on that thing. All right. So now that we talked about going big on things, how will you choose what things you're going to go big on? Here's what he says. He says you need to make space to escape and think. You need time to listen and observe. You need opportunity to play. You need time to sleep. And you need selective criteria for making your choices. All right, so the first thing is space to escape and think. And Greg Mckeown did this when he was writing his book. He said, I am blocking off the time from 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. to write, and I will not take any calls. I will not take any appointments. My auto response is I'm on monk mode. I will not look at email. I am just focusing on this book until it is written. And because he did that, he was able to write the book. He also references the CEO of LinkedIn, and he said the CEO of LinkedIn has 2 hours in the morning that is blank time on his calendar. And he has that because he needs time to think, because after that, it's go, 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 right? And even Bill Gates does this himself, right? Bill Gates, the guy who, when he first started Microsoft, used to have Tang, which is a powdered Kool-Aid kind of substance, on the back of his hand. He would have Tang on the back of his hand, and he would lick that Tang so that he wouldn't have to stop and eat because he needed to keep going and keep coding. And yes, is that weird and crazy? Yes, it is. But Bill Gates, this driven robot of a man, takes 2 weeks off every year during Microsoft to read articles and to think about the big picture of his company, and I'm sure his life as well, right? We all need time and space to think. And Greg Mckeown says in the book, he says, if you cannot do this, is you can take 20 minutes in your morning and you can read one of the classics that's helped people along their journey in life, such as writings by Marcus Aurelius and many of the other Stoics. And this will help you to escape and think at least just a little bit every day. He also says you need to take time to listen and observe. And he says he keeps a journal every day. Journaling is not something that I regularly do, but I know that I need to start. I'm just worried that I'm going to end up like Anne Frank, right? I heard this comedian one time, he said, hey, aren't we all just totally violating Anne Frank's privacy by reading her diary? I love that joke so much. And also he says what you need time to listen and observe so you can figure out a fresh angle on what you are missing and what other people are missing, right? And he's like, you need time to even just clarify what question you're trying to answer. Time to listen, time to observe, very, very important. And he also talks about playing. He talks about how important playing is, first off, to help us deal with our stress, because playing is an antidote to stress, and stress is your kryptonite to being productive and being creative. And when you play, you're going to be able to see new possibilities, you're going to make new connections in your mind, and your life is going to be better holistically because you are playing. Now, in regards to sleep, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about sleep because I want to do a whole episode on sleep. But what he says is you need to invest in yourself, just like Jeff Bezos, just like LeBron James, and just like world-class violinists, by making sure you get enough sleep. Now, this last section is about having selective criteria. You got to be selective on the things that you do. If you are not pumped about an option, then the answer just has to be no, because life is too short for you to do things you sort of like. You got to understand that it is the only way to be happy in life. Here's the deal. People, what you got to do is you got to take this quote from Derek Sivers. You got to be extremely selective, and you have to say to yourself, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. Because here's the deal. Would you marry someone you sort of like? No, you would not. That's crazy. So what the book says is you need a 90% rule, and you only say yes to things that hit this 90% threshold of criteria. And if an option is a 7 or an 8, then it's out. And they use an analogy of hiring, and they say if a person is a 7 or 8, they're out. And what you're doing is you're turning down good options and waiting for a pretty perfect option. And so the rule should be, if someone asks me to do something, I'll do it if it's in the top 10% of opportunities that come across. Because you need to have standards. You have standards in everything else in your life. So you have to have a criteria of how you're going to choose. And you can't do this with everything, right? You can't do this with things that you need, like your job. If you need a job right this moment and you have to pay rent, or if you're hungry and there's not a lot of options that are open, sometimes you got to do some Taco Bell, right? But with things that are optional, you need to have strict criteria of what you're going to do, of opportunities that come across your way. So the way you can do it is, let's say an unexpected opportunity comes your way. You write down a criteria of 3 things that are the absolute minimum of how you're going to choose whether or not to do the thing. So I'll use myself as an example. Let's say there's an event that's coming up. I ask myself, is it close enough to me to go to? Will I vibe with the people there? And will it be interactive? That's my minimum criteria. Then what I do is I create an ideal criteria, and it needs 2 of the 3 in order to pass. So again, here's some criteria that I have. Will it be fun? Will it align with my values? And can I dress up like Voldemort? Because that's what I do every day anyways, right? So just kidding. But maybe my last criteria is it inspiring? So that's what you need to do for all your options. And with your work options and with your project options, what you need to do is ask yourself these 3 questions. Is it something I'm passionate about? Will it tap my talents? And does it serve a significant need in the world? And I did this with this podcast before I started it. I asked myself, am I passionate about self-development? Yes, I am. Does a podcast tap into my talents? Yes, it does. Does it hit a significant need in the world? Yes, people need to learn about self-development in a fun and entertaining way. So it checks all the boxes, and that's why I started this podcast. All right, so I'm going to summarize that last part real quick. You're needing some space to escape and think, so you must go on monk mode. And some time to listen and observe what the people are not seeing. Go and play. You need some time to do that. It will really stress and you'll feel your best and also get some sleep. You need criteria so that you can make a good choice. It's 90%. If it's not hell yes, and it will be a no. All right. That was part 1 of my summary of the book Essentialism. If you found this podcast episode helpful and you know somebody who would benefit from listening to it, please send it to them so you can help them focus on what's important in their life, stop doing the unimportant things, and have a life that's both meaningful and satisfying. This is Your One Life. I'm your host, Kim Young Kim. I hope you have a great day. I hope you have a great week. And until next time, peace.